Nancy, are you ready to go? And
Yes, I am. Thank you.
okay, and the streaming folks are ready to go whenever, I'm assuming.
We are live.
Okay, thank you. So we'll call the meeting to order, 9 o'clock on the dot. Welcome, everybody. June already, hard to believe. I don't know how time can go so slow and so fast at the same time here, but it seems to happen. So welcome. Nancy Davis has taken our attendance virtually here. Everybody is present. Mayor Bailey, Councillor Pierce, Member Brown, Member Verhey, myself, Chair Haley. We also have staff with us, Robin Hewitt and Nancy Davis. And as always, reminder, and of course, Inspector Nash from OPP Detachment. And as a reminder, we are streaming live on the county's YouTube feed. This is open to the public meeting as we have done throughout all of COVID. So just a reminder on that. Well, let's get into the meat of the agenda and seek an approval for the agenda, please. Mayor Bailey, Councillor Pierce, and all those in favor. And that's carried. Declaration of pecuniary interests. Are there any at this time to declare? Seeing none. Well, we will move on to, we have no delegations or presentations today. Minutes from previous meetings. So we have a few here, May 18th, 21st, and 26th that were included in your package. We can do a motion to approve all three at once, if that's the wish of everybody. Member Brown, motion to approve. Seconder for that, Mayor Bailey, and everyone in favor, or all those in favor? Thank you. Against, abstain? Okay, that's carried, thank you. So let's jump into business arising from the minutes. We have an update from Robin regarding the OPP detachment proposal.
Sorry, I don't have my glasses on, I can't see, but so the proposal as approved by the Police Services Board and was recommended to council was passed at the May council meeting, and the submission was put into the province that very same day. So now we just wait to hear, and I think we're good.
Thank you, Robin. So we've, the council has then approved the additional community member seat. So there'll be 6 potentially people once the province approves that plan.
That's correct.
Great. Good to hear. Any questions or discussion on that item? Okay, none. Thank you, Robin. Member Brown, did you want to provide an update on the Brant Towing Group contract?
Thank you, Madam Chair. After our last meeting, Adam, Chair Haley, and myself, we reviewed all the input that was received and put that into the contract or modified it slightly. Adam then forwarded the contract to the Brantford Towing Group, and he had hoped to have an update back from them today, but we gave until the end of the month. We're going to review any input that comes in from them. We'll consider it, and then we'll bring a final draft back to the July meeting for the board.
Any questions of Member Brown? Councillor Pierce.
Self off mute there. Not a question, but just a comment, Madam Chair, if I could. And thanks to, I know we've thanked him on this before, but thanks to Adam for all his hard work on this, and to you too, Member Brown. I know that it's been a challenge, but I think it's safe to say, as far as the Brant Tow Group, we're in a much different place than we were 6 months ago. So I appreciate all the work that's been put into this, and we'll just see what happens now, because the ball is in their court to come back. So thank you.
Yeah, I would echo your comments as well. Councillor Pierce Adams been an invaluable resource to both Member Brown and myself on this whole file from start to finish. And his work on it, it's been very, very appreciated for sure. Just working through, just for everybody's benefit, you know, trying to streamline that contract, trying to make it a little bit more update, user friendly. It won't be as redundant with other pieces of legislation that are already in place. So hopefully it's an easier document to digest and review. It doesn't change the relationship with the tow group and OPP. It doesn't change the relationship with the tow group and the call list. It doesn't change any of that. It just hopefully brings it a little bit more up to date for everybody. And we'll hopefully get some feedback from the Brant Towing Group to be able to add into that and then move forward and then get that finalized and signed off and done. Which is great. All right. I'm not sure, Inspector Nash, if you want to speak to, I know one of our outstanding items from last meeting was just the action plan, which is included in our package. I'm not sure if you have any overall comments or anything that you'd like to speak to on that.
At this point in time, it's sort of a living document, so it has been shared with everybody. Certainly, if there's any questions, my understanding of the plan was put together in consultation with both the community and the PSB. So it's just a matter of focusing on those commitments and measuring those, assessing those outcomes, and moving forward with the actions on those items. So I really have nothing to offer at this point.
Great. Any questions or discussion on that from any of the members? Councillor Pierce?
Thanks, Madam Chair, and thanks for that segue, Inspector Nash, because you spoke of measuring. On page, well, I guess it's 14 of our report. I guess it's the message from the detachment commander. The last paragraph in there, it talks, well, second last paragraph, it talks of the OPP have launched the 20 to 22 strategic plan, and it's got the three main priorities: our people, our work, and our community, which is fantastic. It breaks those down into our people, our work, and what they each mean. And you kind of alluded to it there. How are we going about measuring these? What are the targets? And if we don't meet the targets, has there been discussion around what may or may not have to happen if those targets aren't met?
So, Madam Chair, through you, thank you for the question. Yes, so the OPP puts forward a strategic plan. We do identify specific priorities. Those priorities are generic in nature and cover a number of things. We talk about things like, very quickly, our people, obviously mental health and the wellness of our members as it relates to post-traumatic stress and some of the challenges of on the job work. We've taken significant steps in improving those areas, ensuring our members get the support they need, especially in a critical incident and whatnot. And that's ongoing. So, there are constant measurements as far as our progress. Specific targeted outcomes, those get identified as we move forward, what those needs are. And as we continue to assess the changing needs and evaluate what's working and what's not, we look to improve upon those. So that is an ongoing thing. Very similar to our work, we look to work with the community on a regular basis, and as those needs change as well, we'll continue to evaluate. And if something's not working, we'll look to make changes to make it better or improve upon it. That could happen through consultation with community members, the PSB, and others. So, there may not be specific targeted outcomes, but those get identified as we move forward as far as what the changing needs are. And that's very true for the other piece as well.
Okay. If I could, Madam Chair, follow up to that. Now, I understand that, every community will be different, and there's different, I don't want to say priorities, but different things happen in different communities. I'm wondering, as a whole for the OPP, is there something that, is it measured at that level, or are the measurements within the detachment itself?
Yeah, so there'll be a mix of measurements with respect to some of the provincial outcomes. We look at significant major crimes and things like that. That may be a shared strategy across the province versus some of the local priorities, what some of the specific needs are within the community. So both areas get looked at and get addressed. And that's done in consultation with the communities.
Okay. Madam Chair, if I could, I just have two more questions about the report.
course.
On page, I guess it's page 18 in our package, where the title is Action Plan Commitment Summary. I like the way it's kind of split up there. It's got, the crime, roadway, waterways, trails, and other. I'm just curious, it speaks to it kind of later on in the report, it's kind of mentioned, but when we talk about roadways and waterways and trails, I don't see anything specific in the summary as to how speeding fits into this. There's nothing about, nothing of aggressive driving or speeding or anything like that. As I say, in a different part of the report, it speaks to more traffic and speeding, but I'm curious if in your experience, Inspector, how speeding would fit into the whole commitment of things here.
Through you, Madam Chair. So thank you. When we look at speeding as it relates to motor vehicle collisions, obviously we talk about the significant factors around motor vehicle collisions and speeding being one of the leading causes. That's really a focus. We're looking to address speeding issues for the purposes of public safety to ensure those motor vehicle collisions aren't happening, people aren't getting injured. So that's really where that focus comes from. So it is addressed by, as we look to reduce our MVCs, our motor vehicle collisions, speeding is one of those considerations, much like seatbelt or occupant restraint use, distracted driving, and impaired driving. They all fall within that category.
Okay, so it's all kind of bulked in with that then?
Yeah, that's how I look
Fair
at it.
statement?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. One last question, if I could, Madam Chair. On page 20 of the report, there's no title on it, but it's a continuation of the commitment, the outcomes, and the actions. Right at the very bottom, it speaks of acquisition of equipment to assist members in cyber investigation, and then it's got acquisition of specialty training and equipment to help officers to enhance cyber-based investigations. As we all know in the world today, cyber issues are becoming huge, and even down to it's no longer big businesses or small businesses, it's right into the house. I'm curious here, is that something that the OPP, as I'm going to call it the umbrella of an OPP, looks at as a cost factor? Because I'm thinking that would be the level where it would have to start, not necessarily down at the detachment level, because I'm assuming that all the records and everything are all uploaded somewhere into a main location through the OPP. Now, is that something, can you just confirm with me, is that something that's driven by OPP headquarters, or is that driven by the detachment?
Madam Chair, through you. Yes, so that's one of those examples of those provincial initiatives. We identify concerns, so that being cyber-related crime across the province, and from the organization down, they'll identify that as a strategy we need to focus on. Locally, we can identify, so it's sort of a tiered approach. We're able to address certain things and utilize certain technologies locally to assist in some of those investigations involving cybercrime. We have local resources available to us within region, so it's sort of a next level. If there's something we can't do locally, we go to the next level. And obviously, if we're talking about a major event involving a business and whatnot, we can reach out to folks in Orillia to assist with a higher level investigation, which has happened in other areas of the province.
Okay, and I appreciate that. So where I was looking at there is as much as it's an umbrella in headquarters, they are trying to get that expertise at the detachment level as well, which that's kind of what I got from that. So that's a good thing. And I appreciate the time on these questions. And just a comment, if I could, Madam Chair, on page 22, as Inspector said, that this is a living document, and the top box there on 22 where it says explore options of a dedicated traffic unit in the county, it just shows that this is a living document because we are in fact kicking that off. So that just shows how this document is in fact moving forward, which is a great thing. So thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Pierce. I think we'll be working at the next version of the action plan probably quite soon, given that this is 2020 to 2022. So we need to start also thinking about the community's priorities so that we're ready for when that time comes to be ready for the next version of the plan. I know COVID kind of got in the way here of the release of this plan, but we did, as a PSB, work with Inspector Anderson on some of these priorities and some of the input that was into the action plan. And so this is good to follow up on, and I'm glad to see that's finally being distributed and it's out. So that's good news. Is there any other questions from any other members? Okay. Councillor Pierce, as usual, you are able to get to the meat of the questions on behalf of all of us. So we do appreciate, because I think sometimes you're asking questions that the rest of us are thinking. So that's perfect. So let's move on to the next section of our agenda, unless there's any other business arising from the minutes. Okay, seeing none, back to you, Inspector Nash, in terms of the detachment commander's report that is in our package on page 29, I believe, of our package.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to share with the board very quickly. I continue to be impressed by the dedication of members of the Brant County team. I've had an opportunity to speak with many of them, and still more to meet, and obviously with some new people, new faces in the detachment. So I just wanted to share that with you. Visibility, in my view, has been very high as I've been out amongst them around the county. I have come across a number of officers out on patrol and whatnot, and even meeting with some of the community members. We do see, they are seeing our members out there, which is good. So that's good feedback I wanted to share with you. So with respect to the report, I'll get right into it. So human resource updates. As mentioned, we welcomed 3 new recruits who've started, PC Michael Graham, PC Brody Jeffrey, and PC Belisha Vanderkamp. Joined the team this month. PC Hector Gibbison has accepted lateral transfer to Niagara, and he'll be looking to move on in August. PC Chris Parker has accepted a lateral transfer and be joining the team later this month. We have been identified to receive 3 experienced police officers who will join the team next month. Competitive process from the crime unit vacancy was just recently completed, and that person has been identified. So we'll look at a date to be determined. Traffic management unit vacancies have been posted as an expression of interest, which was shared previously, with an effective date to be determined. Tentative dates say August and September. I'm actually aiming for July and September. We talked about that overlap. I'll speak to more about that as kind of go further on the report, because we have other things to consider. That includes providing additional coverage of utilizing the school resource officer during the summer months when school's not in session. And we've also been able to work with the county and identify alternative strategies in putting people out with a focus on traffic management. So over to community mobilization officer report. We were able to get some statistics on mental health across the province, and we were able to share that very generically. And we can say that mental health related occurrences are increasing year over year, so they are higher. That's an ongoing concern, obviously. For the month of May, we had approximately 14 referrals and 4 crisis calls. The community mobilization has reached out, met with a number of stakeholders, so that continues to be ongoing. Being new in the role, just trying to establish some of those, meeting with some of the stakeholders, especially post-COVID. Youth School Resource Officer, obviously continuing with the OPP Kids program in the schools. And as mentioned, for the summer months, we'll have that member actually assisting frontline and with a focus on traffic management, some of our focus patrol initiatives, and other identified priorities. Community Services Media Officer, again, we continue to post via social media, website. We look at updating that as well. And I understand there's some updates provided recently, so that's ongoing. Focus patrol events, I provided stats in there. So we do have Highway 24 and 403 ongoing, where we basically closed Colburn Street and Cockshot Road. We're going to return with the MVC review. We're going to look at those additional focus patrols. like to get that traffic management unit member, the first one in, so we can start identifying some of those specific priorities and get them out there. The Brand Off-Road Vehicle Enforcement Initiative, 45.75 hours, 14 PONs. That's ongoing. They were out this past weekend and a number of contacts were made. When I talked about visibility, a number of comments were made by some of the public. It was a very busy weekend out in the county. I'm assuming that has to do with step one. And so a lot of comments with respect to visibility. Concern around that is we're seeing a lot with our contacts, we're seeing alcohol use, not just a one-off, but we've had that experience this past weekend too. That's a concern. The fact that people are out there consuming alcohol and operating these ATVs in the county, not for their own safety, but as well as the safety of others. They're endangering others on the trails for sure. Crime Stoppers received 19 tips. Victim Services, 36 referrals were made. Quick COVID update. Front doors of the detachment are now open. Appointments are encouraged. And we are doing criminal record checks for both employment and volunteer work. So we're going along with the county opening up its doors. We've opened the front doors as well. Extended Service Office in Onondaga is now open. I talked about the traffic management ATV patrols. For your awareness, Highway Safety Division has posted additional provincial constable vacancy that'll report out of this location. This is part of the original plan. The benefits to the county is that this person will be coming and going from the detachment. So we will see some additional enforcement in the area by that member, be it a day where they focus within the county or again, coming to or leaving the county. Noteworthy events as far as the incidents, just quickly high level. Obviously, you'll see a number of ongoing enforcement initiatives around speeding and other traffic related activities. We continue to investigate a number of property crimes and hold people accountable for those. So that's ongoing. Right over to the last page of this report on the trends and actions. So with respect to the charges, we do have an increase in charges for the month of March as compared to March 2020, but still a decrease year to date. That decrease is less than last month, so we are seeing an increase in number of charges being laid. Of note, speeding related charges are up 285% for March as compared to March last year, and impaired driving charges are up 88.9% for March as compared to March last year. Violent crimes and drug crimes are up year to date compared to 2020, but still down compared to 2019. Property crime is down year to date compared to 2020 and down compared to 2019. Motor vehicle collisions year to date are down overall. That's a positive. Vehicle related property crimes have decreased 42.9% compared to May 2020, and year to date are down 34.1%. Mental health calls have increased. 911 calls have decreased. Alarm calls have decreased. And domestic disturbance calls have decreased compared to May of last year, but are still up year to date. Patrol hours, we've seen a slight increase in patrol hours over last month. Foot patrol hours themselves have decreased compared to the previous month. Members who are regularly dedicated to that activity were attending training for the month, so we did see a decrease. That decrease was not as great as anticipated with their absence, so we've been able to augment those hours with other members, which is a good thing. And foot patrol and cruiser patrol hours year to date are down compared to 2020. So that's a quick overview of the report, and certainly welcome any questions with regards to its content. Thank you.
Thanks, Inspector Nash. I do think it's important just to note that, patrol hours and foot patrol hours are down compared to 2020, but in the context of COVID, and no one was on vacation, no one had their leave, no one had any of those things at this time last year. And now, of course, we're back to opening things back up. People are back on vacation, back on training, back on leave. So I just think that's an important context to have when we talk about some of these numbers with the beginning of COVID and hopefully the end of COVID. Questions for Inspector Nash, Mayor Bailey?
More just a comment through you, Madam Chair, is that the mental health piece of it shouldn't bother us as much as the number itself maybe shocks us a little bit, because the mental health people, organizations and agencies are all there to pick it up. So everyone is on high alert that this is just part of the days that are among us. And so although it's a big number, there's lots of people waiting around to make sure that that number is serviced properly. So seems like a big deal, but it sort of is being taken care of at all different levels. So thank you for that.
I guess I'll just note for the benefit of my fellow PSB members, I did ask Inspector Nash when the school resource officer returns to school, hopefully in September. There are some opportunities maybe to look at the reporting and the opportunities for us to understand the trends and things that are being seen at the youth level and the school level. Other PSB OPP detachments have different templates and different styles of reporting. So in some of our conversations, Inspector Nash and I have discussed how we can best report back to PSB on some of those trends and actions that the school resource officer is seeing, that we can then identify and either be aware of or understand what actions are being taken to kind of mitigate some of those before they turn into something bigger. So that we look forward to seeing what Inspector Nash is able to pull together for that. I think that'll be a really good addition to our reporting and just understanding of what's going on. Any other questions? I mean, I just want to pass along my thanks, I guess, to all the members. It's been a busy month. I follow the social media, I follow the different pieces of news, and every time there's lots going on, and I think that's great that there's lots of communication that's going out to the community about the work that's being done, the presence that's out there, whether that's seeing somebody in person or whether that's reading it in a social media feed. I think it's really important that our community sees the work that's being done to protect the community. But also in this report, there's just we all know speeding and traffic is a priority, and by looking at the report for May and then all the different things that are happening, there is a lot of work happening in the traffic area, regardless of the traffic unit and regardless of the additional measures being taken. And I guess I just wanted to highlight that work that you had mentioned, Inspector Nash. On top of all the other incidents and issues that you're dealing with, I think that our community is being well served, given what's happening here and the work that you're doing. Councillor Pierce.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I even waited to see if anybody else had anything on this thing. I got a few here. So on page 32, when it talks about the community mobilization officer, the first line says the following information contains mental health related occurrences from January 2018 to March 2021. And then it's got the charts there where it's broken down in the years. What I want to understand here is in the lower chart, is that are those percentages of the first quarter, or are those percentages of the entire year? Because where I'm going with this is if we take 2020 and 2021 first quarter there, if we look at the numbers, so for 2020, if you look at the volunteer escort to hospital, right, I'll just take that one as an example. Is that 24% of the overall year, as opposed to if we look at 2021 first quarter, we're already at 25% of that 65 calls, which again, I'm just trying to understand, are they all, those bottom percentages, are they all of first quarter, or are they of the entire year other than 2021 where it states first quarter? Because if that's the case, our numbers, and I understand what you said, Mr. Mayor, about there are a lot of people, waiting to help with the mental health issues. But by looking at those numbers, if they are in fact just percentages of the first quarters, we're way up.
Councillor Pierce, I read that a little bit differently. I read that as a percentage of 25% of 260 in 2020 or 25% of 65. It's all relative. It's relative to, like, even if we get to 250 calls in all of 2021, we could still be at 25% voluntary escort to hospital because it's relative of the number of the sample size.
Right, but what I'm trying to get at here is I'm trying to do, if possible, if there's any way that we can trend this. If the bottom is all, if it's all first quarter, then we're actually down a little bit. But if the bottom is all is for the year, and the last one is first quarter, then we're actually up. So I'm
Okay.
trying to put some sort of denomina on there if I could.
Sure. Member Brown, did you have something to add to that?
Through you, Madam Chair. John, if you go up one, right above that, and I was looking at this when I read it as well, it shows 2019, 262 occurrences, 2020, 260 occurrences, and then it shows Q1, 65 occurrences, which is trending to be the same as last year of 260.
Right.
That's the way I read it.
And if you look at it over the whole year, I can appreciate that, but what I'm having troubles with here is, let's say, for example, we'll take the example you used there, Member Brown, of the 2019. If we had 262 in the whole year, okay, was there approximately 65 in the first quarter, or was there 150 in the first quarter and the other quarters were, very low? That's what I'm trying to understand here, because we have one graph that shows one quarter, and then we have other graphs that are showing the year. I'm just trying to measure them, if we can, on a lower scale in a smaller length of time.
Apples to apples.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm going. And again, if we could, I don't know how much extra work it is to break it down like that, Inspector, but just so we can kind of compare, because they often say that the winter months are the dark months, and potentially there's more issues through those months. I don't know, but I'm just trying to compare, if you want to call it, quarter to quarter as we progress through the year.
Inspector Nash, did you want to jump in there at all?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. So yeah, I don't have that information available. That's something we can look at pulling, so we can do year-to-date comparisons for the previous quarters. Certainly that is something we can capture. It's not shown in this report, nor did I ask for that information. They just showed totals for the previous years.
Mhm.
And as far as the percentages, yeah, it is relative. So what you're seeing is, basically the voluntary escorts, the involuntary apprehension, and their diversions based on that relative number, not for the quarter. For 2018, 19, and 20, it's for the year. So those are your final numbers. And then for Q1, that's our experience. And they will change a bit as the year goes on. So again, it is relative to the 65 that we have for Q1 showing.
Okay, no, as I say, I appreciate that. I was just trying to get a smaller gap of time to do that. So, okay, thank you for that. On page 33, when it talks about the youth school resource officer, it says, at the end of April, 12 of 13 elementary schools in the county were interested in the online delivery of the OPP kids. Was there any reason given why the 13th school didn't want to take part of that? Because that's kind of, I feel that's very important and be something that the kids should have and would enjoy. I'm just curious, was there any blaring issues with that last school as to why they didn't want to participate?
Through you, Madam Chair, I don't have that information. Obviously, it is something we propose, and it's it's dependent on that particular school, whether they're willing to, run that program. Could be a time thing. I mean, there's a number of possible reasons. I don't know for sure in this case.
Okay, yeah, I was just wondering if there was a big issue or something like that, because as I say, that's fantastic involvement, but it would have been nice to get them all involved with it, because it is important stuff and it's very beneficial to the kids as far as I'm concerned. But, okay, one last one, if I could, Madam Chair, and it's been kind of spoken to in regards to, if you look at the noteworthy events, speeding, stunt driving, impaired, speeding, stunt driving. As you go through them, like, some of these speeds are just unbelievable as far as I'm concerned. But then you get to the last page, and the one that really stuck out on me, and I have a question about this, is the person that was stopped doing 185 kilometers an hour in 100 and was impaired at the time. I'm curious, is there anything, 185 and 100 is bad enough as it is. Impaired is bad enough as it is. Is there any extra fines that get, I don't want to say thrown in there, but given if somebody is I don't want to make light of it, but combining the two of those, like one on its own is dangerous enough. But then when you add the 185 kilometers an hour and you're impaired, is there extra fines that go along with that? Like, see you later, you're never going to drive again type thing?
Through you, Madam Chair. So for the courts, that might be considered an aggravating factor, depending on how that event unfolds in the court process. So that might be something a justice of the peace or judge can consider when it comes to taking a look at the totality of the event and assessing penalty at the time. So that can be considered an aggravating factor. So when it comes to the actual, the offense and the potential punishment, that punishment is usually a range. So based on sort of what they consider a lesser event versus a more significant event. So that aggravating factor would bring them somewhere higher up on maybe that, on that continuum. So it would be taken into consideration.
Okay, no, I appreciate that. It's as I say, you look at those things and you know, we go through these things on a monthly basis. It doesn't seem like people are just speeding a few kilometers over the speed limit anymore. All these you see are, you know, the speeding with, you know, racing and all that kind of stuff. It's baffling. But anyway, thank you very much for the report.
Mayor Bailey.
Yeah, and through you, Madam Chair, to the inspector. When we had our first, obviously, slow opening the other night, it was very disturbing as a resident living in a small town, like I live in St. George, and I saw many people that night with a case of beer, sort of standing on the main street, each sort of having a beer, very disrespectful, quiet, but still illegal, very illegal. Then you sort of look the other way and you see sort of at the car wash in St. George, you see another group of people, case of beer, tailgating on a truck. And because of the opening, I mean, there's no excuse for that. Bylaw was called by a couple of citizens for something like that. Bylaw never showed up. I'm sure Bylaw was very busy that night. I'm not sure whether they should have even called Bylaw. I think that maybe should have been a call to you, but I didn't make the calls and I only saw the tail end of the guys being sort of shooed off the street with their case of beer. They were on my side of the road. They weren't part of any of the patios. So I don't know whether it was just because it was that first day, that sort of little bit of freedom, a little bit of liberty. I'm not sure why they felt they could all sort of just drink wherever they wanted to drink that night. It was a certain age group. It was sort of young 20s, I would think, mid 20s. I can't tell how old anyone is anymore. So I know they weren't 14 and I know they weren't 50. So they were something like that. And they were sort of all just sort of very casually, they weren't harming anyone, but it didn't make it any less illegal. So I'm not sure whether there are pockets in the county that have big patio presences. St. George is one of them because they have 3 right in a row, all packed and all lined up. So I'm just maybe suggesting in the future, maybe you could come to St. George around 7:30 on a Thursday, Friday, Saturday night, because all kinds of funny little things are happening. And you don't want to come down so hard on everyone just because it is a little bit of an opening up and people are needing that kind of socialization, but it's still very, very illegal. And I'm wondering whether those numbers don't add into your, you know, when you're wrapping up your numbers to show the more drinking and driving. So, you know, once you see something, you feel responsible. And I'm not sure the bylaw was the way they should have gone, but it had already happened. So I sort of just stepped back a little bit, but maybe we won't have to step back again another time. And the other thing, just before I finish, is I am so glad to see policemen everywhere I look. I don't care whether they're on their way to the bank. I don't care whether they're waiting in line for a sub. I see policemen in uniform talking to people. And that makes my heart feel very good because it's what we were lacking in the county. We were asking for it. Now I see it. I see it all over the place. And as I said, I don't wait around to see what they're doing. I'm just glad I'm seeing them. So for that, I thank you.
If I may, Madam Chair, just in answer to that, certainly that would have been a call to the police for sure. I'm guessing as a result of step 1 that it's sort of liberating for some and that, you know, they may be taking advantage of the situation and just being very casual about where they might consume alcohol. I can share with you that on the weekend, our members were out on ATV patrol, and they cautioned a member who was just about, or a community member who was just about to enter the trails on an ATV, explaining that, it is illegal in the county. And he was apologetic as he was opening up a beer in front of the officers. So I think, some people have forgotten what some of the rules are. And it's just a matter of reminding people that, it is still illegal. You can't do it. And fortunately, because of the limitations with respect to some of the patios, people are not getting in there where they want to be. So it is happening. And yeah, we're certainly out there. Like I said, I see members all over the place for the county, and I appreciate that feedback. And I understand, I know in my dealings with some of the community members in St. George, there's a really good sandwich shop on the main street there. So, they were very quick to share that with me. So thank you.
Inspector Nash, will you be covering the discussion about the traffic unit enhancements in your motor vehicle discussion, or will that be something that you should that we should talk about here? You had mentioned there's some additional measures you're taking with the county, and I wondered whether there was an update you could provide with respect to that transition to the traffic unit.
I can speak to it very quickly, Madam Chair. So what we've done is we have the initial position we're aiming to fill in July. That expression of interest closes next week. So we'll fill the one. The second will be September. We have the school resource officer covering off for the summer months. We also have identified additional paid duty events in collaboration with the county, and we're able to identify additional officers and have them out there focusing on both the traffic enforcement piece as well as ATV patrols. So that's something we're able to work with the county on.
So the county would, just to clarify, the county would pay the extra pay duty time for the officers to be out on patrol and doing the traffic enforcement, ATV enforcement, until you have, in addition to, or until the traffic unit is up and running?
Or I should clarify that because of the delay, I understand the funds were budgeted for the traffic enhancement, but because of the delay in identifying those people, those positions remained vacant, so those funds were not spent. So we're able to allocate those funds to additional traffic responsibilities, and that's only for the summer months. I think we have it going to September, but we're going to continue to evaluate that, and we want appropriate measures so we can report back to the county on how we're making out.
Okay, good to know. Thank you for the clarification. Any other questions or discussion? Mayor Bailey?
No, Madam Chair, I think Marty had his hand up and you missed him.
No, I saw him. Just you guys both went up at the same time. I guess no comment then from Mayor Bailey. Member Verhey?
No problem. Thanks, Mayor Bailey. Through you, Madam Chair, to the inspector, I'm just curious about an update. I know it's not 100% relevant to the report, but just wondering about the org chart or organizational diagram for the detachment. When we were talking about the new hires and lateral transfers and whatnot, I know there's a topic that yourself and Member Brown are taking offline to look at, but unless that org chart discussion was wrapped up in there, but I was just wondering if that's close to becoming available.
I believe we're going to be discussing that in our in-camera discussions today. Member Verhey?
Okay.
It'll be up. It'll be coming up. Yeah.
Thank you.
Anything else with respect to the detachment commander's report at this time? There's lots going on, so it's lots of moving pieces, which is great for the county to see. So without any further ado then, Inspector Nash, did you want to move into the motor vehicle collision review?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'll go through it very quickly, high level. And if there's any questions or if there's any discussion on it, I welcome that. I'll point out, so between 2013 and 2020, top 3 locations for repeat serious collisions were Highway 24, Cockshut Road, and the 403 between Wayne Gretzky Parkway and Jerseyville Road. So that sort of supported those initial focus patrols that we had out there. As we move over to looking at the fatal collisions and the personal injury collisions, number of primary causes there, things like fail to yield right away. These are for 2020 collisions, disobey traffic control, inattentive driver, speed excessive, and unknown for the fatalities. And likewise, your PI collisions, speed too fast for conditions. So that speaks to, again, that need for traffic enforcement, speed enforcement, failing to yield right away, intersection related, inattentive driver. That can include use of handheld communication devices or other things, lost control for whatever reason. And that goes on. I won't get into all of them. As far as the 2020 fatal collisions, if you look at the map that's provided, they're kind of across the county. There's no specific concerns with respect to a certain intersection that has repeated fatal collisions. So nothing's come to our attention with respect to that. PI collisions, that's more of a heat map, and locations of interest here are Cockshut Road at Jenkins, Cockshut Road at Brant, Highway 54 at Painter Road, Brant Road 22 at Bishopsgate Road, Highway 403 in the area of Jerseyville Road, Highway 24 at McLean School Road, and Grand River Street North. So when we talk about the traffic management unit coming online, the additional need for focused patrol events, these will become focus priorities for their activities. Will not be all inclusive, but certainly this report and the analysis we conducted highlights these particular areas for that need. So that would become part of that conversation. As we look at the statistics from 2013 to 2020, again, some of the very similar causal factors are identified in those. Locations of interest, again, this is going back to 2013. What has changed since that time? There's changes to roadways, intersections. So a number of things have happened since that time. So again, we'll take that into consideration, and we'll look at some of these areas as priorities for the traffic management unit. So on the last page, with respect to collision summary overall, we've identified very similar locations to our 2020 statistics on where we need to focus some of our activities. So very high level, I'll leave it to that, subject to any questions. Thank you.
Any questions or discussion? I do think it's interesting, Inspector Nash, the correlation between speed and traffic infractions and collisions. And I guess it's just a general overall comment that people's respect of the roads and the respect for others on the roads is diminished quite a bit. I don't know if that's a COVID thing or that's just a general thing of where we're at in society, but the lack of respect that people have on the road for themselves and for others is discouraging. I think it's important that it's unfortunate that we have to use these types of tools to be able to enforce that good behavior, to be able to do that. But it's an alarming trend to see what's happening out in the roads. Councilor, your hand go up there.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for this report here. I think this is very good information for the public, because when we speak of speeding and things within Paris, within St. George, within Burford and stuff like that, and the question that we get all the time as councillors is, how come they're not on my street getting speeders? This information here, I feel, is very important to them, to all of us, to understand that it's not just local to your street that this is happening. It's happening all over the county. And when you look at the county as a whole, as we would expect it to be done, it's being prioritized. And obviously, the fatal collisions, we want to have a presence in those areas to understand, is there anything we can do? What's going on? That type of thing. So again, right off the hop, I want to thank you for this report, because I think it's excellent information for the public to have, and I'm hoping that a lot of them see that. Just to to give them the understanding that their street isn't the only street that this is happening on. So that's kind of just a comment on that. What I would like to understand here is when it talks of the, whether it be the fatal collisions or the PI collisions or the other graphs you have in there, it's quite a variety of areas that is broken down into, whether it's speed or impaired or pedestrian and all that kind of stuff. But I noticed they each have an other. And what I'm curious here is as I say, with all the different groups that it's broken down into, can you just give me an example of what other might be?
Through you, Madam Chair, just first your comment, your original comment there. I think it's important to understand that, we have people who are failing to obey stop signs, speeding down particular streets. Well, I can assure you that we're out there enforcing the traffic laws. So if they intend on speeding on this street, they're going to be speeding elsewhere in the county. So we may not get them on this street, but if they continue to speed, we will get them elsewhere. So they are being dealt with as we come across them. So on the other piece, with respect to the question about the other, so through the course of a motor vehicle collision investigation, if it's not clear what category it falls in because of limited information at the time, just the nature of the collision, the time of day, there's a number of variables. We have to assess everything. If it's not clear that it falls within any of these other particular categories, it would typically fall to another. And that's it's not known or it's not captured by one of these categories. So that's where others sort of that final catch-all.
So it's not, if I could mention, so it's not necessarily a thing per se. It's just the fact that, under the other categories, we couldn't, definitively say that it's one or the other. So appreciate that clarification. And again, thank you for this report.
Councillor Pierce, a question for you perhaps. Is this something that, that PSB should forward with some kind of attention to council members? Obviously all this stuff is public information and it's available and they usually get the detachment commander's report and whatnot, but is this something to highlight as additionally, special for the council's awareness?
I don't think it would hurt, Madam Chair, and we could also, put it as information into Brant Safe Streets as well. The fact that this is what's happening, all over the county, and just to the inspector's point, there are absolutely people, running stop signs and speeding on back streets and all that kind of stuff. But I guess at the end of the day, there's only so many officers out there that are on duty. And not to say that, I'll take my street, for example, not to say that speeding on Hillside Ave in Paris isn't an issue, because sometimes it is, but there's other issues out there as well that are being prioritized through. So I think, sure, if we could send that through to council, and I'd be happy to take it back, or if you want to send it through as an attachment, Madam Chair, that would be great. And I'll make sure that it's discussed there as well.
That sounds good. I will work with Nancy then and yourself and we'll get that prepared. Member Brown, did you want to comment?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that one of the points that shouldn't be lost in this, especially if it's going to council, the number one complaint has been speeding, and we've been told that there was a strategy of focus patrols. And since I've been on the board, what I've noticed, my opinion was that we had to give these focus patrols an opportunity to show they either worked or they didn't work. And I know I've had that discussion with many of the councillors, and the number of personal injury accidents continuously seems to be going down. So it's trending in the right direction. And I've got to believe that it's the strategy that's been employed with the focus patrols. And these reports do show that. So I think it would be a great thing for council to see that, sometimes you just can't make things happen instantaneously, and it takes a little bit of time. But those numbers are trending in the right direction. They're not what everybody wants, but they are trending in the right direction. I do have one question for Inspector Nash. I noticed the 285% increase in tickets. Just about everybody's eyes lit up when that was stated earlier. And last night when I was looking at it, has something changed? Because I know that you've got more, you're having less patrol hours, less focused patrols, yet the traffic tickets has gone up by that significant amount. Is there something that would explain why this is happening, or is
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. So there's nothing specific that is identifying a reason for that, other than, as things open up, we have more people on the roadways. Suddenly people have to get from point A to point B. A lot of people have relocated from previous residences because of working from home and may now have to return to the office. So I can only guess it's an increase in traffic, and those are actually speeding related charges. So could be less warnings being issued. Again, officer discretion at the time. And certainly some of these focus patrols, they're out there, a lot of activity going on. So I can't say that it's any specific thing, but it's something we'll continue to look at.
Thank you very much for your report. It was very informative.
Madam Chair?
Yes, sorry. Go ahead, Councillor Pierce.
Yeah, if I just add a point to that, and Inspector Nash, you kind of alluded to it there with the less warnings given out. I'll get into it later on in my council update, but I had a very good conversation with Sergeant Workman and Vitalis in regards to things for Brant Safe Streets and stuff like that. And I was asking them, how they're liking the new automated tracker, so to speak. So if an officer pulls somebody over and gives them a warning, it's documented down there. And let's say, the next day a different officer pulls that same person over and maybe would have given them a warning, but now they can say, hey, you know what? You just had a warning yesterday. So, I'm not going to give you a warning 2 days in a row. So I'm not saying that it has added to the potential increase in tickets, but just in discussion with those two gentlemen there, they think it's fantastic because there's so much going on and the officers are in so many different places that it helps them understand, hey, you know what, has this person been given 8 warnings? Because in the past, they never would have known that, right? Well, now it's all documented on there. So that may be adding to it, which is, they spoke quite highly of it and they're really appreciative of it coming in. So just wanted to add that.
Thanks, Councillor Pierce. I think you can only give somebody a warning so many times before the ticket is actually what speaks, right? So warnings are a good tool, but the rubber hits the road, so to speak, when the ticket comes in. So that's encouraging, I guess.
Yeah. Well, they spoke to it as education. When an officer gives somebody a warning, they're educating them. You know what? Slow down for your own safety, for other safety. So I guess as they were saying, you can only educate so long, but now we understand that, hey, this person's been educated a couple times. It's not working. So hit them in the pocketbook.
Definitely. If there's nothing further on the motor vehicle collision report or the detachment commander's report, and so we've made a note here. I'll work with Nancy to send the motor vehicle collision report to council for their information. I think it's just important in our efforts to try and bridge that communication. I think it's just important. This is a good piece of information that I think that they would appreciate having special attention drawn to it. Okay, on page 69 is our false alarms summary, which continues, as Inspector Nash commented in his report. There's a downward trend on that as well, and warnings continue to be issued, but we're not seeing repeat offenders in this report at this time. Is there anything further we need to discuss or talk about here? Okay, that's none. So with that being said, then those 3 pieces, we will need a motion to accept the detachment commander's report, the motor vehicle collision review, and the false alarm report as information. We'll need a motion for that. Thank you, Councillor Pierce and Member Brown. Any further discussion on those? Okay, all those in favor of accepting for information? Carried. Thank you. Okay, moving into communications on page 71. We received a letter from Shirley Steedman, the secretary for Brant North Community Policing. here in St. George, requesting funds to buy safety vests for their committee members to use once they're able to get out and about. And my understanding from the letter is they would like to purchase the vests and have them stamped on the back with community policing. And I guess the quick question I have for Inspector Nash is there like a standardized type of thing that that they should be, or is it they can print whatever they want, or is there something that already exists within the community policing program that we could connect them with?
Madam Chair, I don't have an answer to that. I would like to make some inquiries and get back to you.
Great. I mean, and this group is revitalized and seems to be trying to reactivate itself. I've been to a couple of their meetings. I know they're interested in getting out in the community to do some things. And they've mentioned the Lock It or Lose It campaign. I suppose if we're thinking about providing funding for this community policing group, then we need to be prepared for other groups who may also want to submit a request. So, and I'm not sure where this would fall necessarily within our PSB budget. I'm sure Robin can let us know that. Mayor Bailey, did you?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, I really want them to get the funding, and if it's not going to be able to come through Police Services Board, I want them to make an immediate emergency application to the county because we need people that are putting their time into something so important to be motivated and to know that not only the council, but the Police Services Board is behind them. And if we have to do it for every piece of the county, that's even better. If we have to supply a dozen to Onondaga, a dozen to Burford, and a dozen more to Paris, I'm all for all of that. $15 and whatever they want to put on the back. I'm sure it's not going to be offensive and goofy. It's going to probably just be very territorial and say St. George Community Watch or whatever they're going to put. I'm sure that it's going to be appropriate, but I mean, after the inspector maybe comes back with what he's seen on other vests, we'd feel better going forward. But whatever they need, Robin, maybe if you could check and see how much is in the budget. I think they were talking about a dozen for St. George. And if we could manage a dozen to get them ordered, I just know that when we open up, I want them to be able to start because they've had trouble in the past and they do have a lot of energy right now in St. George. And people like Shirley Steedman have been trying very hard for a very long time. So I hope there's enough money, but if there isn't, I'm prepared to take this to council.
Well,
probably, sorry.
Sorry, I was going to say, I would think that we've underspent, with not having everybody go to the conference or not being an in-person conference, or there's some other initiatives I think that we had in our budget that we haven't been able to allocate. With you, Mayor Bailey, I think this is an important initiative to support, and we have an energetic group of people who are eager. We want to be able to support that as well. I know they've also been very interested in like getting community policing signage back up in the community and other things. So I think roughly, we're talking about $250 potentially here. Like it's a large sum. It's a lot for them, but not a lot for our budget. Councillor Pierce?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I agree with the mayor here. I think this is fantastic for St. George to be added and wanting this, but I think it's bigger than just the St. George community policing. I think as an overall county of Brant community policing, and maybe that's what we, after the inspector comes back, maybe that's something that we put on the back of these is County of Brant community policing. But again, I'd be willing to second or move a motion if it's not from Police Services Board back at council to say, hey, you know what, we need $1,000 or $1,500 to get these vests for all of our policing community volunteers. I think it's very important, and it sets them aside from somebody else, just I don't want to say a normal citizen, but somebody who's not on the community policing.
Yeah, I
think it's a fantastic idea.
I think we can start. My suggestion would be we start with the St. George group, given that they're the only ones active at this time, but hopefully the other communities will able to reactivate themselves and be able to draw on that as well. Robin, if you, I don't know if you have our budget handy, but is there, I'm assuming there's room for $250, $300 here to be able to provide that.
So through you, Madam Chair, I don't have it in front of me. I'm typing the treasurer right now to ask her that question, but I think that there will be plenty of room for that amount of money. I don't see it being a problem.
Okay. Councillor Pierce?
Yeah, and I think, and I would agree. If St. George is ready to go, let's get them going. But depending on what Inspector Nash comes back with, I would just like to see County of Brant community policing on the back, because who's to say that somebody on the St. George community policing isn't in Paris or isn't in Onondaga and sees something that they want to put out. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying that it will happen, but that's leaving the door open for somebody to say, oh, well, you're not from Paris, you're from St. George, you're St. George community policing. This has nothing to do with you. No, this is overall County of Brant. They're looking after St. George or from St. George, but I don't think we want to segregate them into, St. George community policing, Paris community. I think it's an overall County of Brant community policing. And that's how I'd like to see it, if we can put that on.
Okay, so is there any other discussion? Inspector Nash?
Madam Chair, the reason why I ask, I'm not familiar with community policing being used. Community watch is something I'm familiar with, that term, but I want to make some inquiries just to be sure about what we can and can't put on.
Yeah, and I have no problem letting Shirley know that's being looked at, so that we are consistent in our communications approach. Is there a number that someone like to put forward as a motion, Mayor Bailey?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion. I would love to see the money come out of police services and not
Yep.
county, just because it makes more sense. And I also, in my motion for us to support this request for 12 right now, I would also put in my motion that the identification piece on the backs of the vests be County of Brant, so that if for whatever reason any one group fails or decides there's no interest, those vests come back because we own them, and they would be used in Onondaga or Middleport or somewhere else. So I make the motion that we support Shirley Steedman's request for 12 vests right now, as soon as we can get them to her, knowing that when other people in the county want them or need them, they will be available to them too, through police services. That's my motion.
Mayor Bailey, my understanding, just so I clarify, we're not ordering the vests or anything. She'll order that herself based on her letter here. Are we just providing the funding to go get that, or did you want us to be involved in the?
I would like us to buy them so that they're consistent and that we can get them. They don't come in different, they come, I think, in large and small or something like that, but it's not as if they're going to be personalized for anybody. I would like for us to also order them and own them.
Okay, so we will be involved in the procurement of the vests and then provide them to the St. George group.
That's the way I'd like my motion to read. Yes.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Seeking a seconder.
Seconder for that motion, Member Brown. Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor of motion? And that's carried. I can communicate that with Shirley, and we'll hear back from Inspector Nash in terms of the appropriate wording. And I'm sure that they'll be happy to hear that this is being supported by the PSB. Member Verhey?
Just a quick question regarding when you say we and procurement, is that us as a board taking care of it, or will the county staff take care of that on behalf of the board?
We'll work with county staff on behalf of the board.
Okay. I was just going to say, if someone needs to volunteer, I would help out, but.
I think the staff have the channels for that, so we'll just work through them to get that procured. Yeah. Okay, and if there's no other communications at this time, we'll move into our updates. And Councillor Pierce, do you have anything from council you'd like to bring forward?
Not a lot from council. I just wanted to touch on the fact that I did meet up with Constable Vitalis and Workman, and we discussed several issues. It was actually a very good conversation. I appreciate them making the time to do that. We spoke of speeding, and we spoke about the loud mufflers and how they're looking to attack that. I got a lot of good information in regards to. We had a good discussion on what London is doing right now, how they're trying to tackle the problem. And we're going to be learning, or they have learned a lot on that, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel, which is perfect. They're looking to they have kind of kicked that off, but also learned a little bit of information in the fact that in regards to the loud mufflers and that sort of thing, what the London Police Force is doing is they're actually, the officer will actually take a quick little picture up underneath of the bumper just to kind of see what's underneath there, because in a lot of cases they're just running a straight pipe. There's no muffler on it at all. But what I found very interesting, and we've spoken of it before, is they can lay the tickets out and all that kind of stuff, not necessarily for the noise, because in the County of Brant we don't have a quote noise bylaw that would get into that territory of loud mufflers and something like that. But that's something that I'm going to be working on with bylaw to see if we can get that bylaw put in here. And Constable Vitalis is going to get me the wording of the London bylaw that they have that allows them to lay the fines for that type of thing. But more often than not, the fine would be for modifying the existing stock muffler. But what's happening in a lot of cases, as what they've been told by London, is the fact that they issue a ticket, they go to court, and there's no proof that the muffler was loud or something like that. So they are trying to snap a quick picture underneath. What they also stated was the fact that a lot of these aftermarket mufflers that are being sold right now, they look like an ordinary muffler. So even if they were to snap a picture of it, it looks like a stock muffler. The only problem is they don't have the baffles in it or something like that. So it's something that there's a lot of different communities that are having the same issue. It's definitely not strictly in the County of Brant. It's happening all over the place. So it's on its way. They're having strategic points, as they say, focus patrols, and it makes sense. They're looking at places where the vehicles would be accelerating, like Grand River Street North, King Edward, that type of thing, where they've got to accelerate going up a hill, which makes it louder and stuff like that. So they are on that. They're looking forward to working with the traffic constables when they're on there to try and merge that as part of the overall umbrella, hooking it in with the Brant Safe Street. So it was a very good conversation. We're going to be hooking up again on a frequent basis just to discuss things and kind of liaise between the OPP and council. So that was very beneficial. Other than that, again, there's been a few council members that have asked in regards to start dates for the traffic constables. Inspector Nash gave us that information today that we're hoping July and then September. So that'll be information that I'll pass back to them. Other than that, unless there's anything that this board has for me to take back, that's about all I have for now. Any questions?
I don't see any questions for Councillor Pierce or any other discussion.
Okay.
Thanks, Councillor Pierce. Member Verhey, any updates from Zone 4?
Yes, I'll just make some brief comments about the meeting we had at the beginning of the month there. So just last week was a good discussion, a little bit more fulsome than the last time we met. So I would just give some updates really briefly, and if anybody has any questions, we can go from there. I'm not sure if anybody participated in the conference. But we had a very thorough overview from Fred Kostanen, who's the chair of the OAS Police Services Board. And it was all about training and education. So we dug into that quite a bit. So he made a plea with the province to get on board with a proper training program. So it just rang some bells from when we started and shape the police services, our police services board, in terms of talking about training and education and everything that we wanted to have done. But it sounds like we weren't the only jurisdiction with that issue. It sounds like it's a province-wide thing, and it's been in talks for many years. So he's working hard on that for both municipal and provincial appointees to the police services boards. So he is trying to get that through. So we talked a little bit about what different provinces do and whatnot. Sounds like we're a little bit ahead of the game in terms of having an approved plan for what our board looks like going forward, but they're still very receptive to getting requests from the Solicitor General's office to have some training if we want. So I have some contact information, but like I said, I think we're a little bit ahead of the game there. So that's an option as well. The next major update was from Dwayne Sprague, who is now our sort of expert from the SolGen office. It was Chris, but it's been switched back to Dwayne. So I think some of you know Dwayne. So he's a wealth of knowledge as well. So he updated us on a whole lot of things. The one to note was just that once the CSPA is proclaimed into effect, then the new board structures will also take effect. And I think we were all aware of that already. So that's expected to be early in 2022. There's a towing plan that some of us were interested to, provincial towing plan that is coming out. So we are waiting for information on that. I will share once I do learn more and receive that. And then the last topic of note was an update from Norfolk County on the cannabis situation. So I was curious to hear anything from Inspector Nash about whether or not that's an issue, or from Councillor Pierce or from the mayor. I brought it up briefly the last time, and it was only talked about briefly at our last Zone 4 meeting, but there was a thorough discussion that was had, and we talked to some mayors from the Niagara area, and there's a bit of a plea for help to band together as police service boards to, although it is outside of our sort of jurisdiction and influence, to continue to plead with the federal government to start clamping down on some of the things that are happening. So, like I said, I'm not sure how. I don't seem to hear too much from Brant County proper, but it was a very heated discussion at the Zone 4 meeting last week. So I just thought I would take that back here, because if we're not experiencing those issues, I guess it's good. But at the same time, if there is something we can do to help show our support, so Norfolk, neighboring us, is trying to work very hard to see what they can do. Other municipalities are saying, hey, you're just going to have to learn to throw up your hands because you can't do anything about it. Halton, I guess, came up with a plan. There's some good framework that's been developed, a 5-point plan. I think if you just Google that, you'll see there's lots of reference to it in terms of trying to basically get all these operators to follow the rules. And there's a complaint process through Health Canada, which they're all asking us to participate with and in. So yeah, some proactive, positive thinking around, hey, we can, if we keep up this pressure, hopefully we can see some change. The other perspective, the other extreme was, you know what, it's kind of a lost cause. So I want to take that back and just see if there was any point of discussing that in more detail as a board. And that is the end of that I wanted to highlight from the meeting.
Member Verhey, do you have anything in writing about that cannabis issue from Norfolk that you could share? Or I guess it's kind of hard to comment without having the context of what issues might be.
Yes, I do have. I have a report that just came out. That was just sent around with some minutes, so I can share that. And I did ask Norfolk for a bunch more information, but it really stems down to prescription sizes and corresponding with numbers of plants, right? So you get these operators that are considered, they're legally allowed to be there, but it starts with neighbors complaining about odors and all of these different things, and then numbers of plants that they're allowed to have and not have, because everybody's entitled to grow personally, I guess, right? There's rules around that. And then these operators that are producing on the larger scale, and it's sort of running stuck in the court system, apparently, because of proof of the fact that plants are dying, so we were replacing, and then you caught me at a time where there's just too many or just too little. So a lot of it's kind of the communities getting bent out of shape about all of the illegal happenings within these so-called legitimate grow ops. So they're looking for a plan at the municipal level to say, how can we go in and hold these folks accountable, and what kind of process do we need to develop? And that's where, like I said, I don't know if that's been an issue where Grant is running into those same challenges and stuck with it. But I would be
So I
curious
think
to hear from council or from the OPP.
if you could forward, I would be interested in reading that, because I do think there's some issues in Brant County that we could discuss maybe at the next meeting, that, Health Canada provides the license for personal or medicinal use, and then there's no inspection or follow-up, that may impact us in the county. Maybe we could add it to the agenda, and then that gives Inspector Nash some time to kind of put some thought behind it, and as well as ourselves as members and council. And then with some context from the report from Norfolk, we can then have a more fulsome discussion on it at the next meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, Councillor Pierce, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, just and I think it's a great idea to have a fulsome discussion on this. But what I can say is we've had, and the mayor can attest to, we've had several conversations around the Horseshoe in regards to the marijuana in the county, and it's a variety of number of plants, smell. There's a number of different things that we've spoken of around council. So yeah, I'd be interested to understand how Norfolk is saying that as well. So that'd be good info to have.
Okay, great. Mayor Bailey?
Yeah, and through you, Madam Chair, too, I think before we comment on anything here at Police Services, we need to understand that the OPP are mandated to enforce the directives coming down from the province. And this is an item that has gone through its trials and its tribulations, and we do have to enforce what is legal and what is acceptable. It's like the person that lives next to a pig farm. You shouldn't have really bought the farm next to the pig farm if the smell of pigs bother you. And so it's something that's been grandfathered, and it's something that we have to deal with at council through bylaw and other people. So it is on the table at council right now. It probably comes to us every time we have a planning meeting. So there are some issues, but I'm not sure that we should be dealing with them at the police services level when the OPP is our service agent. So.
Okay, so as a follow-up, Marty, Member Verhey, you'll forward that so that we have some context to understand what the issues are, and then we can then decide how best, whether or not to proceed with the conversation or not, once we understand the context of Norfolk's concerns. Anything else from Zone 4 that you want to add?
Nothing noteworthy, really.
Okay.
Besides the 3 updates.
Okay, so then moving to 9.3, the Community Safety Wellbeing Plan, page 73 and onwards of your report is a draft. I just make a note that if you're following council's proceedings, that there are going to be some modifications made to the report. So this is a draft that staff have prepared. I guess my comments on this are that, in my perception, is that it should be a living document in terms of monitoring the issues and the trends and the challenges in the county, but also the next step is really, how do we implement this, and how does it become a thing versus just a document. So I think the the first part of the work is done, but now the real work in the county begins in terms of actioning this safety and well-being plan. And I know that that's been probably discussed a little bit at council as well, in terms of next steps. So I'm really happy to see the plan come together, and the work that county staff have done to put it to bring it together. I know that there's still some modifications and edits to be made. Councillor Pierce and then Mayor Bailey.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. And you just hit the nail on the head there. The report itself is fantastic, the information that's in there. And those that listened to the last council meeting, Councillor Chambers, he made a point just of what you were saying. It's one thing to have the plan, but we need to make sure the plan is implemented. And if I could use his analogy, because he kind of gave it to me for my Leafs, he said the Toronto Maple Leafs had a plan to win the Stanley Cup, but they didn't implement the plan. So implementing the plan is just as important as the plan itself. So Councillor Chambers, hopefully you'll be able to see this report, and I'll give you kudos for that one. And I'll leave it at that. But yes, you're right. The report is only half the job, making sure it's implemented and how to implement it, because it's not a throw everything all at once. I think that is the important part that council is well aware of, and we've discussed that is going to be the plan, and staff is going to be coming back with the plan as to how it's going to be implemented.
Mayor Bailey?
And through you, Madam Chair, as you said, the report itself has been voted on unanimously by council, and the modifications of the presentation of the format, I signed off on those this morning. So I've seen it completed now, and it's obviously the way we wanted it and the way it needs to be when you present something to the province on behalf of the county or a municipality. So all the boxes have been checked, and we're well within the timeline, which was a tight timeline. That's another reason why, things got a little bit mixed up, but it's all finished now. So as of this morning. So
Great, good news. Just one last comment, I guess, is my hope is that, that this is reviewed on a constant basis, whether it's through the committee or through staff or however. The value of the plan is not that it stays static, that it remains dynamic, so that we can address the emerging issues as they come. This isn't the only one. It's not one and done. Councillor Pierce, I guess the Leafs had a plan, but the Canadians executed far better. So unfortunately.
Well, not last night they didn't, but anyway, we'll leave that alone.
All right. So this is a great piece of work. I'm pretty proud of the work that's been done here. I can't take any credit for it. The staff have done a great job of pulling that together, and I'm just a committee member, but I think it's great news for the county. So we'll carry on from that. And then just really quickly under a chair update, Member Verhey talked about the OAPSB conference. Member Brown and I both attended virtually the conference end of May. The first day we had quite a good opportunity to meet with detachment. It was all about board and detachment commander relationships, and we had a good speaker from the OPP talk to us a lot about how that works, how the two relationships have to work together. We talked a lot about setting objectives and goals and how to measure things that impact all of that. We talked about the how does a PSB do that detachment commander review, and why is that important? A number of those things. So Member Brown and I will digest, and if there's any recommendations to bring back, we'll do that. There was also some other really good speakers throughout the conference. As Member Brown talked about, the large part of the conference was also about the detachment plans, which we were already ahead of the game on. So that wasn't as, but there are quite a few detachments that are not, or councils that are not ready yet for that timeline. So they've been granted extensions. So kudos to Brant for having our commitments done and having our communications done on time and with good collaboration between councils and PSBs, because that's not necessarily the case for other jurisdictions. And then lastly, I guess I just want to talk about I'm probably putting Inspector Nash on the spot for this, and we can recircle in July if we need to, but we did talk at the last meeting about the misunderstandings about the grants and what needed to happen, and some canceling of certain funds because of COVID. And I just wanted to bring the board up to date that Inspector Nash has done a deep dive into all of the particulars. And indeed, his recommendation is to cancel that particular stream of funds because they are not going to be able to be used. And so back to where we started, just wanted to make sure that everybody was clear, and perhaps Inspector Nash, you could provide a couple of comments on that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I did take a look. So that's with respect to the provincial grant. That was an enhanced police response to victims of sexual violence through training partnerships and increased accessibility. Challenge with this is part of the initiative was to develop a training package and deliver that package to members. Unfortunately, due to COVID, the actual training portion was incomplete. We had a number of subject matter experts within the county that were lined up to assist with the preparation of this training material. And again, we were unable to do so. So for year 2, there were no funds spent. Year 3, as we were looking at it, and the reason for the cancellation, we're talking in a total amount of there was $2,000 for delivery of training, and there was $5,000 which was access to transportation for victims, which would have fit well within the community well-being plan. However, when we assessed that particular item, and my understanding it was looked at, that concern around potential re-victimization was an issue. And certainly that's not the intent of those monies, and certainly not something we would want to do. So that's why the recommendation was we go ahead and cancel that grant. And again, because it is with the Police Services Board, that is with yourselves, and certainly if there's any questions about that. This initiative is still worthwhile. I have asked one of our members, the member who was originally looking after it, to look at what we need to fulfill that training package. So they're putting together a plan forward, and we'll seek alternative funding arrangements to see if we can't complete that. Again, that would support both our action plan and the community safety and well-being plan. So it is something we still want to pursue. Thank you.
Thanks, Inspector Nash. So just for clarity, we will, because the contract is signed on behalf of the Police Services Board for these project funds, we will send communications back to the ministry to indicate that we will cancel that stream, that portion of the funding, because of all the reasons that Inspector Nash just mentioned. So that closes the loop on that file. Is everybody okay with that? Yep. Okay. Yeah, and then I guess thank you to Mayor Bailey as well for lowering the flags yesterday in recognition of the RCMP officer, the fallen RCMP officer out west. And I guess just a special acknowledgement to our OPP members in here in Brant. I know when any law enforcement officer is taken in the line of duty, it affects all of you in the brother and sisterhood of law enforcement. So just wanted you to know that here in Brant, we're thinking of all of you in that regard, and the work that you do to put yourselves on the line every day to protect all of us. So thoughts to all of you for that. If nothing else, I'm going to move into the 2021 priorities. I just have one quick thing I wanted to highlight, and that's as a board, we talked about communications within the community, communications within Brant County, and enhancing that and showing the community the work that's being done. And I wanted to recircle on something, I guess now maybe we're coming out of COVID. We tabled this item for many, many times, and Inspector Nash probably isn't as familiar with it, so a little bit of work to do. And maybe it's not in the same original format, but we did talk originally about a communication piece that would be sent out to all county residents of the work that was going to be done by OPP, some of the statistics, some of the education information. I think originally Inspector Anderson had shown us a kind of a newspaper kind of format, which doesn't have to be any of that. It can be much shortened. It can be can be really anything we want it to be, but I wonder if now is the time that we start planning and thinking about, we deferred it in our budget last year, we put it back into the budget this year. I would just hate to see us lose an opportunity if there is something we could do for outreach with the community, to let them know some of the work that's being done, some educational things that we want to have happen. And, you know, if that's not, we need to start planning now if that's something that we want to have distributed, say in the fall. But I just want to gauge the temperature of PSB as to whether we want to revisit this priority and start that in the planning process. And we do have funds allocated in our budget for it this year. Seeing no opposition, which is good, and thumbs up from Mayor Bailey. Thank you. I will work offline with Inspector Nash just to kind of talk more about what that might be, or what possibilities there might be, and obviously that's something that county staff and Inspector Nash can work on, but we'll revisit that. And then I guess my only last comment is the website. It's great to see a page dedicated to policing and OPP, but just a comment that once you create a website, it needs to be updated. So there's many things on that page that need some attention that we can work, Nancy and I can highlight with the appropriate folks to keep that updated. If there's nothing further on the communications, I do believe we have some in-camera items to discuss. So we would need a motion to go in camera. Councillor Pierce, Member Verhey, all those in favor of going in camera? Carried, thank you. And we'll just wait for Nancy to tell us when we are. It's a different look. I can't see everybody on the screen. Okay, I think we're all back.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
all back online.
Yeah. I think some of maybe the smaller committees might be able to meet, not in council chamber or anything, but, and obviously not at the OPP station right now. So we would need to find a room big enough for us to meet. But I think council won't meet now until at the end of summer, October. I think we're hoping that if everything stays well and everything keeps getting opened up the way I hope it gets opened up. I would think that by the end of maybe late summer, everything should be almost back to normal. And then, shooting for a nice Christmas season, I would think, for everything. It would be wonderful to have everything feeling right for Christmas. But I think as far as meeting, a group this small could almost meet before, a group that needed delegations and things like that. So the delegations are what throw us off the meeting, because once we do make it a meeting where we're going to meet, and people have the option of coming, and then it would have to be sort of a hybrid. We would be all together, but anyone trying to talk to us or speak to us would have to be still doing this. So there's an awkward stage where maybe we could meet together if there weren't delegations and things like that. But if we can just hold off maybe for that extra month at the end, we can just do it properly. So it's a really kind of a bad answer to a question, but it all depends on what happens. I mean, if we have a bad weekend this weekend with stage one, I mean, we could be closed back down by Tuesday. Like who knows what they're going to do? They say, it's going to be a 3-week experimental period. But I mean, if the lid blows off it, I mean, the provincial directive can be whatever it needs to be, and it could happen. So everyone's wound very, very tight right now. So it's not a very, sorry, Jim, it was really a terrible answer.
We have some things to decide when that time comes, whether, we've not talked about broadcasting our meetings. Even when we do meet in person, we deferred all that. We've done this during the last 15 months or so. We have that to discuss, and I don't know that we ever finally decided whether we would continue to meet in council chambers or over at the detachment in the community room there. There's some things that we probably need to figure out at some point. But Mayor Bailey?
Yeah, in a world that didn't go through COVID, the idea was that we would always meet in the new OPP detachment in the community room. That's part of when we built the OPP station. That's what we were all saying out loud, and that's what we all assumed was going to happen, just because it made sense. And we had resources behind door number 1, door number 2, and door number 3. If anything ever came up, the police were right there. We could ask them. And it just seemed convenient, and it seemed like the right place to meet. We used to meet in the detachment over here in Mildew Hollow in the good old days. And I mean, again, if we needed to know something, somebody would come in and tell us what we needed to know. And so this was going to be sort of the cleaned up version of that. So that's what I think is going to happen. That's what I think should happen. But if the OPP station, there's different rules. Hopefully the OPP station will be feeling comfortable to be opened when we're able to meet together. So that's what I'm thinking is going to happen.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think we have a challenge, though, that if we want to broadcast our meetings, the technology, there was some discussion about whether the technology would be available at the community room at the detachment versus to be able to stream and do all the things that we're going to do, which again, we don't have to decide right away. But we got into all those discussions, and then COVID happened, and then we have this nice, beautiful building that we intended to meet in, and so I'd love to see us all back together in person as well at some point when it's safe to do so.
Well, maybe we should be talking about the financial component of having that room finished so that it can be broadcasted. I know that here, the way the council chamber sat before COVID, there was only sort of one meeting room that you were able to, broadcast from. So I think we should, if that's what we want to do, this is the time to be doing it before we need to do it. So
I think that's what we have to decide as a PSB, that when we go back to in-person meetings, those are available to the public to attend. Is that feasible in the detachment building to just allow public access? Do we want to stream? Do we not want to stream? We didn't stream before COVID. So I think there's some things we need to decide. I agree with you, Mayor Bailey. There's some things we need to decide that would impact some of those decisions. And we can add that to the agenda for July so that we can make some decisions so that we can start preparing for the return to in-person meetings and whenever that might be. But I think we need to make some decisions as a board.
Good.
Member Brown, sorry, go ahead, Mayor Bailey.
No, I was just saying it's a good idea. And because we have a little bit of time now before, it's going to be a few months. This is a good time to get any work done that we need to get done and find out where the monies would be coming from and all of that kind of stuff. And after that, at least then when we get together, we won't talk about it then and then have to wait till March to have it done. So this is
Very good.
This is a good time to talk.
So we'll add that to the July agenda. Member Brown, did you want to chime in there?
Yes, Madam Chair. I think that we had discussed this some time back, and I believe it was Cindy who was saying that she thought that the capabilities would be there. And I don't ever remember getting a follow-up report on that, but it'd be worthwhile just knowing what the capabilities are. It may already be in existence there. I know that they were looking for it.
Okay, Nancy or Robin, we can follow up with Cindy. And I think be prepared then for July that we need to make a decision about future meetings being accessible, whether in person or streamed. We didn't do that in the past. We're all used to it now. So is that something that we want to make a decision on? But that'll help us make some plans for returning to meeting in person. Our next meeting is July 20th. And I just want to take a quick poll. We normally recess for August as like council does. Just want to make sure that unless something comes up that requires us to meet, the plan would be that we would recess for August as well, and make sure that's in line with everybody's thoughts. That's okay with everybody? Okay, so that would take us to July, and then the next meeting after that would be September, unless we needed a meeting for something emerging otherwise in August. So unless there's anything else we want to discuss, we'll take a motion to adjourn. Member Verhey, thank you. 11:15. Have a great day, everybody.